Hello, welcome to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form, continuing with day 3 of Chucktober, reviewing the 7 Chucky films and 24 episodes of the Chucky TV series that are all in the same universe. And yeah, the way I've been doing this is watching one per day at midnight because I really want to get to it as soon as I can. And what tends to happen, well, I say tend as if I've been doing this a long time, but with Child's Play 1, I was able to stay awake for the first 45 minutes before deciding, okay, I'm going to finish this in the morning. For Child's Play 2, same thing, 1 hour, and then finish the rest in the morning. Um, but so that's 1 and 2. But for Child's Play 3, which is a subject of this video, I drank a bit of soda a little bit before, and then once it got to midnight, I put on Child's Play 3, and after 8 minutes, I felt like I wasn't going to be able to stay awake for very long. So I don't know if that's indicative of the film or if I was just super tired, but yeah, I ended up watching the majority of it in the morning. And this is considered generally one of the, if not the worst of the film series. Um, if you throw the remake in there, then that might be the bottom for lots of people, certainly for me. But Child's Play 3 sort of feels like it. People go back and forth on whether that or Seed of Chucky are the worst of the main film series. And this one was very much rushed into production. It was greenlit before Child's Play 2 even came out, and it was released on August 30th, 1991. So, quite a quick turnaround, 9 months after Child's Play 2 came out. It begins with a similar type of sequence, the reconstruction of Chucky, but it's 8 years later. So, the warehouse where the climax of the second film took place. Sorry, I'm just looking up who did the music. It's Corey Larios and John DeAndrea. The music does feel in line with the world of this film series. I'll give it that. But yeah, we see the abandoned warehouse. It's all full of cobwebs and the doll parts are just lying around. It's like, wait, why has all this been lying around for 8 years? Like, nobody cleaned out this place. Like, what the heck? And the film also has like this dark future or semi dark future visual aesthetic. So the color palette doesn't really work that much for me, and it also doesn't help that a lot of it takes place at a military academy, so the color palette feels pretty bland compared to the first two films. But yeah, we see the melted uh, doll that Chucky became. What remains of him. This crane comes down and picks it up, and because it pinches the body, blood spills out of it and into this vat of the material that makes up the surface of each good guy doll. And it's like, is a person controlling this crane not paying attention and just doesn't see all of that blood coming from this thing? Like, right away, I mean, with these films, you gotta suspend your disbelief because it's about a killer doll. But that right there, right from the start, it's like a real head scratcher there. But I do like this sequence of seeing the doll getting put together. Chucky gets a new doll body that pretty much looks identical to the one that he had before. An early idea for this was that the blood was gonna, spill and become part of multiple dolls, and that would result in an army of Chuckies. An idea that they'd come back to in a later in the franchise, but I guess they didn't have the budget for it here. I think that idea would have been because the idea of like, oh, his soul is in all of his blood, I think that would have been a bit too complicated and, might raise a lot of questions and stuff. So, there is like a little tip of the hat to the idea, though, when Chucky activates the two good guy dolls, makes them use their voice thing to each other, and it's as kind of a scare tactic. But yeah, the company that makes the good guy dolls, they have this meeting. They with this little slide presentation talking about how 8 years ago, Andy touched off the or whatever their wording was, like the whole scandal that started with Charles Lee Ray and that connection to the good guy doll, and that kind of ruined the company's reputation. So to me, it seems like Child's Play 1 is in late 1988 and 2 could be early 1989. So 8 years later, I would place this in 1997, and it seems like the snow is melting. So maybe it's like March or something. But yeah, the people at the company are like wondering if there is a need for good guy dolls even after that scandal 8 years ago. And they talk about, nobody remembers Andy Barclay anymore. And so they make the dolls again, and it's like, say hello to the good guy doll of the 90s. So, again, showing that there haven't been good guy dolls since the 80s, apparently. So, Child's Play 2 had to have been in the late 80s. Um, but the guy in charge, he's all alone, and uh, but Chucky comes alive, and he uses these toys to scare him. I actually quite like the way that these toys are used, and there's nice variety. And for this franchise, it just feels right. But yeah, Chucky ends up killing that guy, and he gets on a computer to figure out where Andy Barclay is. It says his age is 16, so I'm pretty sure, just from watching the films and details from the novelizations, I'm pretty sure that Andy's age is what was retconned, and there's no 2 year gap between Child's Play 1 and 2 like people believe. So my headcanon is that the info on the computer is a typo in universe for some reason. They never say out loud, as far as I can recall, that Andy is 16, so maybe he's 14. He's definitely a teenager, which is why they had to recast Andy. So Alex Vincent is not in this, except for a couple photos. Instead, we get Justin Whalen as Andy Barclay. And I think he really does look like he could be an older, like a teenage Alex Vincent based on what we saw of him as a kid in the first two films. Like, I find it believable that this is what Andy Barclay would look like as a teenager. And I also found it fascinating that this was released the same summer as Terminator 2 Judgment Day, where we get a young, rebellious John Connor. And here we hear that Andy has been kind of a troublemaker. Over the past 8 years, he's been in multiple foster homes, but never really fit in with them. And we get told that he's a troublemaker, at least a person in charge of the Kent Military Academy or military school or whatever it's called, seems to think he's a troublemaker. But I don't know that we really see evidence that he's been that much of a troublemaker. So it's kind of interesting to compare and contrast that with Terminator 2, where we clearly see that John Connor, who's different from maybe what people had imagined prior to that, is indeed a troublemaker. But yeah, so Andy is in this military academy, and there are uh, some. There's a bully called his name is Shelton. There's this other character named Whitehurst who um, kind of doesn't really stand up for himself, and there's also Kristen De Silva, or is it Kristen or Kirsten? It's one of those. Yeah, Kristen De Silva. Okay, I got it right the first time. And of course, Chucky follows Andy to this military academy. You know, he mails himself in a package. While Andy gets a haircut, this 8 year old who's at the academy named Tyler, he sees, you know, he and Andy see this commercial, which is very much just a recycled good guy doll commercial from the late 80s. And they just added a little bit of the "we're back." So I guess that tells you like what their budget was for marketing. And Andy, as he's getting his haircut, you know, he's getting PTSD because you know, he is afraid that Chucky is coming back as he sees this commercial. And meanwhile, Tyler looks excited watching the commercial, and in slow motion, you see him say, "Wow!" Like even before the the doll shows up in the commercial. So I thought that was really weird. It's like, I don't know, is he like super impressed by this dated 80s animation or what? But also, the barber is really creepy and maybe even creepier than Chucky himself. And I don't know if his dialogue was supposed to come across as funny, like he's supposed to be this quirky character who's really mean, but he just really came across as creepy. So yeah, it was just it's this is such a weird movie. But Chucky mails himself. Tyler opens the package. Chucky realizes that he doesn't have to swap souls with Andy Barclay. So he reveals himself to Tyler, you know, his name, saying that he is actually Charles Lee Ray. And so Tyler is the new target. And Chucky also kills a garbage man and drives the truck with the body inside of it to the academy. So the students there are aware of that, and then they just don't really mention it in the next shot, like which takes place a little bit later in the day. It's really weird. But Chucky tries attacking Andy, and Andy's like, "Well, you need me because you need to swap souls." And Chucky's like, "Wrong again. I've got Tyler." And he has this really cringe "Chucky's gonna be a bro" line. But then, uh, you know, Andy is able to hold his own against Chucky. You know, he's taller, so he's able to like throw him and whatever. But Shelton comes in, and Chucky's face changes. Like suddenly it's shiny and lifeless. And Shelton just takes the doll, says maybe it'll be a present for his little sister. But Chucky, yeah, he ends up wreaking havoc in the academy. And even after a faculty member dies, they're all like, well, they would have wanted the war games to go on, so they will continue. And it's like, what? This is such uh, what are these stupid decisions going on here with all this stuff going on? And or not Shelton, Whitehurst Stephen witnesses the aftermath of Chucky having killed the barber, and he doesn't say anything for the longest time. Maybe, granted, maybe he thinks that he's going gone mad, or maybe he doesn't want people to think that he needs to be sent to a mental institution or something. But yeah, there are just some things in this movie that are frustrating. So, you know, there are two teams. They have paintball guns. At night, Andy kind of bonds with Kristen De Silva, and she shows him this fair that's like in the distance, you know, with rides and stuff, and they share a kiss. Um, but yeah, Chucky is lurking around, and he ends up, you know, getting Tyler and Kristen, trying to hold them prisoner. And he also replaces paintballs with actual bullets. So Shelton ends up getting shot for real. And he also has a live grenade, which Whitehurst ends up, you know, doing the Captain America thing of getting on top of it. But you know, it's not a test. Uh, like for Captain America, it's actually real. Like, and he knows it. So like, this is an act of heroism. Like he knows what's up. But yeah, I thought that was a really um, a really sad death there. A really strange seeing this thing happen to these kids at this school. I'm not sure that this film would fly today. So, yeah, just really strange all around. But the climax ends up happening at this fair, and I think that setting was a good addition to this. It feels very in line with the, I guess, toyetic nature of the Chucky film series. And something that kind of clicked with me was the look of this fair and maybe bits of the rest of the movie. And the color palette and stuff kind of reminds me of the Goosebumps TV series from the 90s, which of course came after this. But yeah, there's this whole thing. Andy is able to, Andy and Kristen, they go up against Chucky, and Tyler ends up being saved. Chucky gets half his face sliced off by this Grim Reaper thing that's part of a ride and has like I guess, an actual sharp scythe, apparently. So he looks like a Terminator here, but eventually ends up falling into a fan and getting sliced up. The novelization by Matthew J. Costello, who also wrote the Child's Play 2 novelization, has details that are kind of different for the beginning and ending. So your mileage may vary on which one executes things better. But here we see that, Tyler and Kristen seem like they're gonna be all right, and Andy's like, I've been here before, and he gets put in the back of a police car, and that's the last we see of him for years and years and years. And then we get this final shot of people picking up trash from the fairgrounds, and kind of I always thought that this was supposed to suggest that, oh, someone's gonna find the remains of, the sliced up parts of Chucky, and they're somehow gonna come together again. But yeah, this film, it it didn't really come together all that great. There are things that I do think kind of work. I do like that some of this background gets incorporated for later installments, but I'll get to those later. But yeah, I do think that this is one of the weaker entries in the series, but maybe not as bad as people make it out to me. At least not to me anyway. It's like all subjective. People are gonna like or dislike or anywhere in between with what they watch. But this was definitely a step down from the first two films, so it's no wonder that there was quite a hiatus of 7 years before the next film in the series. So for Child's Play 3, I think I would rate this 6.75 out of 10. It's kind of okay, kind of fine. It could be better. I'd be curious, like, I mean, it's already history, but I was gonna say, I'd be kind of curious, like, how different would the plot have been if Don Mancini had been given more time to write it. I forgot to mention off the top that he wrote it, and this is directed by Jack Bender. Cinematography by John R. Leonetti, and Ed Gale, who did the in suit body performance for Chucky in the first two films, wasn't involved in this one as far as I could tell. But yeah, this was a kind of not a strong end to the Child's Play trilogy or the Andy Barclay trilogy or whatever you want to call it. But I do like the way that Andy, the character that he's become and growing into by this point. I think that he was developed really well. There are just these frustrating things in the movie, and it doesn't look quite as good visually as the first two. But yeah, it's basically my thoughts on Child's Play 3. And yeah, so tomorrow I'll be talking about the fourth film in the series, Bride of Chucky. So until next time, this has been Steven Schinder reviews in video form with Chucktober, and I'll see you all soon.